What would you do if you found yourself completely alone in the woods, only to realize you weren't truly alone at all? Tonight, I'm sharing chilling tales of ordinary camping trips that turned into terrifying encounters with the unknown. From mysterious strangers lurking in the dark to unexplainable horrors, these are stories that will keep you awake long after the fire goes out. If you're ready to dive into the darkness with me, hit that like button, subscribe to Mr. Midnight for more spine-chilling tales, and let me know in the comments, would you ever camp alone in the woods? Now, let's get into tonight's story. This happened 3 years ago, at the beginning of December. Where I live, it doesn't get too cold until late December, and snow usually doesn't show up until January. I'm an avid camper, and I like to squeeze in as many trips as possible before winter. That year, I planned one final trip for the first weekend of December. The location was an hour north of my place. It was a bit colder up there, but I had gear rated for low temperatures, so I wasn't too worried. I arrived at the trailhead a couple of hours after sunrise. There were 2 vehicles parked there, a muddy off-road truck and a minivan. I started down the trail, bundled in my jacket and hat. Early on, I passed an older man and a kid, likely the owners of the minivan. By the time I reached the campsite, it was completely empty, a grassy clearing near a pond, just for me. I pitched my tent near the tree line, spent some time journaling, and eventually built a fire as the air grew colder. Later in the afternoon, a man appeared on the trail. He looked about 40, wore a thick coat, and had a cloth covering his face. His small, flat backpack didn't seem like it carried much. He walked past me and sat by a tree across the clearing. At first, I thought he might have a friend coming, but after about 45 minutes, no one else showed up, and he didn't move. Then, without warning, he got up and walked over to my fire. "Hope you don't mind if I share your fire," he said with a smile. It was cold, so I said yes, trying to be polite. But there was something unsettling about him. His droopy eyes didn't match the forced smile. I asked if he had a tent since it was going to get colder, but he shook his head and kept smiling. We sat in silence for what felt like forever. I decided to leave but didn't want to pack up in front of him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I started gathering my things. He watched me the entire time. When I turned to look at him, he stood up, smiled, and walked back toward the tree he'd been sitting by earlier. But he didn't stop there. He disappeared into the woods. I froze, listening, but heard nothing. Nervously, I packed up the rest of my things in record time. I left the fire burning, hoping it might trick him into thinking I was still there. I trekked back down the trail, my nerves on edge the entire 2-hour walk in the dark. When I finally reached the trailhead, the off-road truck was gone. I still don't know how that man got there or where he went. But one thing is certain, if I had stayed the night, something terrible would have happened. Fast forward to last fall. I was camping on my property, which is surrounded by dense woods. It's quiet, peaceful, and perfect for a quick getaway. Around dusk, I spotted someone in the distance, on my land. They were walking toward my neighbor's property, so I didn't confront them. Later that night, as I relaxed by the campfire, I suddenly heard footsteps, running footsteps. Someone was sprinting through the woods, just out of sight. It was unnerving, but they didn't seem to notice me, so I stayed put. Hours later, I woke up to footsteps rushing toward my tent. Before I could react, they stopped right outside. Through the fabric, I saw a silhouette leaning toward my tent, trying to peer inside. Suddenly, a knife slashed through the fabric, creating a long tear. I bolted out of the tent, screaming, and ran straight back to my house without looking back. I called the police, and as I looked out my back window, I saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods, watching me. By the time the police arrived, they were gone. The next day, officers searched the campsite but found no clues. I couldn't shake the thought that whoever it was not only trespassed on my land, but also followed me back to my house. For weeks, I barely slept, constantly on edge. I don't know if they were targeting me specifically or just looking for an opportunity. Either way, the thought of what could have happened still haunts me. And as much as I love camping, I've been hesitant to go back out there alone ever since.